Todd asked, Todd had asked me to introduce him today, and of course, I said I would, and it's actually my pleasure to introduce Todd. Todd and I have known each other for probably about the last 5 years, something like that. We met at a Roots and Recovery meeting at RCM about 5 years ago, and we've known each other since there, and we became friends. And like everybody in the room, probably we've had our ups and downs, even since we've attempted to get sober. And Todd is no different than any of the rest of us. He had his ups and downs, but I tell you what, the last few years, I don't think, I've been around in sobriety for a while, and I don't think I've seen anyone that has turned his life around like Todd has. It's been an amazing transformation. And now Todd and I are working the steps. We've been working the steps for about 6 or 7 months, and he's on his 10th step, and he's doing amazing. I've never really worked with somebody like Todd. He's so dedicated, and he's dedicated his life now to actually working in sobriety. He worked at RCM. He still works at RCM, and he's an incredible human being. And I'm so proud to know you and to be able to call you my friend. So, without further ado, let's welcome Todd C.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. It is so humbling to be standing here. It's also very nice to see all the familiar faces. Faces that I've seen on the streets before, faces that I've seen go through treatment centers and are still doing what they're supposed to do and alive and sober. And for that, I'm really, really grateful. Thank you, Gary. Congrats on the birthdays. 1 year is awesome. 6 years is so cool. But even that first day is very important as well. That's because that's where it all starts. I was going to wear shorts today, but I didn't want to be responsible for any pain and suffering at the end of the meeting. My sobriety date is 11/4/21. And it is an immense pleasure to be able to be here and share my recovery journey. Never thought I would be at this point in my life at all.
All right.
I wasn't even allowed on people's front porches, and now to be standing here without people saying go away is really kind of cool. Still getting used to that, actually. It seems like my life was everyone else's fault. Everyone else is doing, poor me, society's against me. That's not the truth. The reason I chose today to speak, March 17th, is, and I promise not to cry, my father passed away 23 years ago on this day. He was 57 years old. He passed away due to complications from leukemia. And I know that he would just be very proud for me standing here today. I know he would. He was my best friend. And I think about him every day now with very pleasant experiences. He was just such a cool guy. His father was an alcoholic. And I could kind of see in his eyes and that as my drinking progressed from a very young age, that I was going to go down that same path. And he kind of told me some of the stories of growing up in an alcoholic house and stuff like that. And I could see the pain in his eyes. At least I can see it now. I didn't then, but I still remember those looks in his eyes. I could walk in the door and he would know if I'd had one drink of beer. I could never figure that out, but he knew, he just knew. So after a while, I just was like, yeah, Dad, I've been drinking, but somehow he knew it. I just thought I better have everyone else fooled, but I did not. Um, yeah, my father, Gary R. Carter, in memory of him. Thank you, Dad. I was born here in Missoula in 1966, and yes, there was electricity. Running water was just around the corner. Um, my mother's name was Anne Marie Carter. She has passed also uh, from heart complications. Uh, my parents were just awesome. I can't remember anything really bad memories with them. They spent a lot of time with us, uh, worked very hard. You know, being a homemaker at home, taking care of 4 boys is something I would never want to do. Woo, yeah, but she did a fine job. I do have 3 younger brothers here in town, Randy, Gary, and Lee. Um, but growing up in Missoula was really kind of neat. It was different back then, of course. But we were always fishing or camping, just neat things, playing in the ditch. I mean, I had the coolest tree fort on the block. Had a solar water heater. It did have running water and lights and a fireplace. So I was kind of like the big dog on campus with my tree fort back then. So, but that was really, really cool. I do remember seeing people drinking earlier on when I was a kid. And I was kind of like, huh, you know, they're just getting kind of goofy in that, and never really around it for any length of time unless it was some sort of party or something like that. But um, not a lot of that going on in my life. I do remember seeing a movie. I'm surprised I just now remember this. I think it was Dick Van Dyke. And he was an alcoholic in the movie. And I remember seeing him in the movie and suffering and throwing up and going through all these pains. And I was wondering, wow, that's just got to be just terrible, you know. Hopefully, you know, I'll never go through anything like that. But I was like maybe 9 years old then. So, but yeah, life was just much simpler. Um, my little yellow steel Tonka truck, which I love, my Johnny West action figure. And I don't know what the kids do these days, but I'm glad I grew up when I did. Um, Went to high school here in town, graduated in '84. I was just a skinny little nerd kid. I'm just a bigger version of that now. So, I do remember starting to fight depression about the age of 12 and starting to isolate. And that just got worse over time. Started having bouts of anger, um, lots of holes in the wall at home, cover them up with a picture, of course, until mom found them. Um, but I didn't really enjoy high school. I didn't fit in at all. I was just didn't drink in high school, didn't go to the kegers or anything like that. Big time into my church with my church friends and that I'm really grateful for because that was really great experience. Um, and back then, when I started drinking, the legal drinking age was 18. So that's when the game was on for me. Never drank up until that point. I do remember very, very clearly my first drink, though. I remember how it tasted. I remember how it made me feel. Um, I know there's different takes on when you become an alcoholic, uh, how it demises itself and grows within yourself. But for me, I was alcoholic from that very first drink. I know I was. I could just feel it. It's like if a fire-breathing dragon had finally been awakened, and finally I was somebody. Finally, I wasn't that little nerd kid again. I was cool. I was fitting in. I was growing up. 18 years old, growing up. My goodness, no way. Yeah. Started smoking weed then too. Um, and from then on, it's like the race was on. I was chasing that dragon. And I was just so very unaware of what lied ahead with me, the devastation, the wreckage ahead of me. I had no idea at that point in time. And it seems like it was so long ago, but at the same time, it seems like it was like a couple years ago. Time just flies by. Um, Innocent, unaware, but still kind of had a gut feeling that there's something going on here. Kind of a spooky feeling with my drinking. In my early 20s, I got married. And I noticed early 20s because I do not remember the exact date, which is okay. Um, Very nice lady. But I started drinking a lot. It was every day, and I couldn't wait to get off of work and get that beer. And even back then, it wasn't just a 6-pack; it was 12 or 18, and I pretty much had all those drank by midnight or so I could actually get to bed and pass out and make it to work the next day. I've heard folks referring to that as a functioning alcoholic, but I really beg to differ. That's not functioning at all. That's just like survival for me. At least it was for me. I can only speak for myself. Um, we had different businesses here in Missoula, homes, the stuff, of course, which I'm not going to get into at all because it really doesn't matter. The stuff just doesn't matter. I was just the big shot. At least that's the game. That's what I was trying to portray. The big shot was the money and the cars and the shit, back then in the early 20s. And it got to the point where I was having to hide my beer cans and hide my drinking. Getting just drunk before I went out to any sort of function. That way I would look normal, already drunk with that beer in front of me, just not wanting to guzzle it in front of everybody, but I was already buzzed, so what the hell. Hiding beer cans and hiding my use was like a full-time job. Oh, rafters and bushes and yeah, oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, it's just I look on back that now and then, and it was just like a few beer cans. It was hundreds. I could have gone into the recycling business for Kirby's sake. Um, so, um, during that first marriage, I did get my first FMPA. Still remember that day very clearly. Yeah, very, very clearly. And from there, the marriage just, we were good at running businesses and stuff like that, but it was pretty much downhill. And I knew it and she knew it. And I just continued to drink just more and more. And then drinking was just number one for me then. That was my life. I couldn't think of anything else besides doing that. I did go to my first inpatient treatment during that time, during that first marriage. It was at Providence here in Missoula when they did have that treatment program. I remember reading in my first notes, that I stayed sober for, well, I think I had in my notes like a year and a half. And I was laughing the other day when I'm writing, I was like, oh, fuck, man, you had like 2 weeks sobriety after you got out of that first treatment. So it's kind of funny how your mind changes up and it's like you just become more accountable for what really happened and what those time frames were. It seems like I don't remember a lot of things exactly, and that used to bother me because I had to remember this, I had to remember that, but I'm comfortable with that. I don't remember everything, and I'm never going to. I just know the fact of where I'm at right now, and that's all that really matters. Yeah, I played the games with trying to get myself cutting down on my drinking. I had a calendar at work that I would mark the days on there that I didn't drink. And there'd be like 1 or 2 a month. And what a joke that was. I actually had somebody walk up to that calendar and ask me what that was about. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can't remember exactly what I told them, but they're like, what are you doing that for? So, but yeah, drinking only certain days, or maybe only that one big bag of weed, maybe only drinking while standing on my head in the corner. Um, yeah, and it just got to more and more blackouts. Very scary blackouts. I am so thankful that I did not run over anybody and kill somebody in my drinking days. I just would have been devastated with that. And then the ripple effect that goes along with that, I can't even imagine how close I got. I know I did too. Just looking out in the driveway to see if my vehicle was still there. Very, very sad, but didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just all part of that sort of hard drinking lifestyle. Um, Thought I was doing a great job of hiding things. Man, I was not. I just was not. Started getting away from any like type of friends that I had at the time. If I did have friends, they were just more of the drinking kind. Did do some drugs earlier on, but not heavily. I'm very glad that I didn't get into like cocaine and acid and the shrooms and all that, but seems I've always walked away from that. With fentanyl these days, I lost several friends last year to that shit, and I just lived with that. I live down the road here, and I can see the drug dealing going around, and I stand in front of their car with my phone and my camera on, like, and they just take off. One of these days, I'll probably end up with a rock through my window, but I don't care. So then came the first divorce. Um, in my notes I lost everything. I used to work with this guy at RCM, and he said, you didn't lose that shit. So you drank that away. So, which is very, very true. Drank it away at a very, very fast rate. Um, which is very sad. Worked hard for that stuff, but I am where I am now. I sold my home, one of the homes that was mine, that I got in the divorce, and found myself a new blonde girlfriend that drank just as hard as I did. And man, I'd never had a blonde girlfriend, and she drank like I did, and it was party on. Um, Pocket full of cash, bought myself a new Corvette, moved to Phoenix. And believe it or not, I pulled a U-Haul trailer down to Phoenix with a Corvette. Wouldn't suggest it. Remember sitting across the intersection in Vegas, and there was a Corvette purist, of course, and he had his head on his car in the stereo going, what the hell is he doing? Scraped over everything over the Hoover Dam. Yeah, good times. Um, but finally made it there with my new girlfriend. Um, Drinking. I can't imagine drinking heavier, but it does get that way. You just become saturated. I just became saturated with just alcohol all the time. Um, got a job at Turf Paradise there. It's a horse racing track. And you'll never guess what my position was at that racing track was. Food and beverage warehouse manager. So I had the keys to liquor rooms, beer rooms, and thousands and gallons and everything else. And liquor vendors coming in to do business with me and making orders and, keys to the beer cooler. I was the cool guy because I had the keys to the shit. Man, but drunk all the time. Drunk all the time. I'd have to change kegs and stuff like that, I remember, and I'd always just blame the stuff spraying on me. That's why I smelled like alcohol. I got away with it for a while. But very depressing times there in Phoenix. my depression really started to go down from there. Suicidal ideation started picking up for the first time in my life. And they continued on from that point in time. Yeah, thought it was my dream job at the time, but obviously not. I ended up coming back to Missoula because my father was not doing very well with his cancer, and so I made the move back to spend more time with him. But in actuality, all I did was couch surf and drink more, and just drink away more of my stuff. I do remember seeing my father for the last time about that point in time, up at the cabin in Sealy Lake. He was very withered and very down the way. He passed like maybe a week or two later. I remember grabbing his arm as I went out the door, giving him a hug and telling him I loved him. And he knew that I'd been drinking then too. He was very sick at that time. And that was the last time I saw my dad, and I was drunk. Can't do anything about that. I can only do what I'm doing now. It has taken some time to get over kicking myself in the ass about that. I catch myself still sometimes, to feel sorry about myself, but I just can't go down that path. I won't. It is not a healthy thing in my recovery at all. It might seem like a little thing, those little thoughts and stuff like that, but I have found out in my recovery that those little things can actually be pretty humongous if you let them fester. My life was pretty much just a smokescreen, a fake, just going through the motions, just survival. Got to my first time of being homeless. I still remember that day very clearly, thinking, oh my God, I never thought I would actually get to this point. But we had a car, so that was cool. But being 6'3" and trying to sleep in a car is not very conducive. I remember thinking it was cool heating up my sub sandwich underneath the heater vents in the car. How to be creative while you're on the road. Oh my God. And from then on, I was just working different jobs. Some of them in Sealy Lake, up the lumber mill that is now closing, which I was very sad to see. Then my suicidal thoughts and ideations became more plans. I traveled around when I did had my car back, and that I traveled around with a length of hose in my trunk. And that was my security blanket. My security blanket being, well, if life shits on me enough, that I'll just attach that to the exhaust and be a done deal. So I did try attempting suicide up in Sealy Lake. That first time, it was just wild. I knew all the nooks and crannies of Sealy Lake very, very clearly. I knew everywhere. I knew where I could go in the middle of the day and just do anything I wanted and not be seen or heard. But while I was up there doing that and passed out on the seat, all of a sudden I just was awakened from a slumber, half-gallon bottle was walking next to me, got up and looked around. The hose wasn't in the window anymore. And that hose was like 300 yards out the back of my car out in the woods. And there wasn't anybody around. Yeah, there was nobody around. Scared the fucking God, Jesus. I mean, it was like the willies out of me, but still it didn't slow me down. I still traveled with that section of hose in my trunk. I don't know how close to death I got, but not near enough. Yeah, by then I'm getting into my 40s. Up to 3 FMPAs by then, doing probation. Did a lot of that up in Sealy Lake, so I think we met like once a month with my officer, so I just drink the whole month anyways. Another suicide attempt, that one, the hose melted off in the exhaust, I think. And coming back to Seeley Lake, the cops caught up with me, and then I was 3 weeks away from completing a 3-year sentence, and they gave it all back to me. Go figure, huh? So, got my first DUI. I was at a .37 with that one, and it was just before aggravated DUIs. Passed their test in the drunk tank. They couldn't, how did you do that? You know, obviously not with the BAC, but I says, man, I'm an alcoholic, I'm just an alcoholic. Another stay at MCDC. Actually, I've had 5 different stays in inpatient facilities. 3 of them, one of them Missoula, 2 Butte, and 2 here in Missoula at RCM. I just would not wish upon anybody what I have been through. From then on, it was just more homelessness. I think I probably spent a total of 2 years on the streets here in Missoula. Just walking down that sidewalk with the backpack on, and that's not really living at all. It's just a matter of survival at that point in time. And my heart goes out to all the homeless people that I see every day. You just want to go and fix them, but you can't. Everyone, the community, Missoula, is searching for the answers. But I hope that we just keep trying. I think that's where it's most important. My depression at this point in time, I always likened it to reaching into this inky blackness that you could not see anything once I put my hand in there. And I had that. It was always a visual for me. I'm a very visual person. And I had that for a very, very long time. Remember being in Providence at the psychiatric unit for my very last stay, actually. Talking with Dr. Moonjow. Awesome guy. And he's telling me, he says, Todd, and I've been there about a month and a half by then. He says, Todd, we can't do anything more here for you. Your next step is going to be Warm Springs. This is all we can do, and I have like 7 or 8 stays at that unit over the last like 5 to 7 years. So I signed this thing saying if I ever, go back to the ER or whatever and suicidal, that I was going to go to Warm Springs. So that was my next step. No longer allowed at Providence. Whew. If that isn't a sign of unmanageability, I don't know. I always thought unmanageable was like a feisty chihuahua at the dog park, but I like the unmanageability. God, there's a lot in between those in those letters, but while I was there, he's got all the information in front of him as far as my emergency stays. And I tried lying about it and saying, oh, yeah, I remember that emergency stay. I wasn't drinking. And he's looking at the screen going, oh, no, your BAC was this and that. And that was so humbling. I just felt like I wanted to just shrivel up in his office. But he had told me that I had 48 emergency stays in a 6 to 7 year time period just at St. Pat's alone. 48. The unmanageability. Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely just hell on earth for me. Another time I almost froze to death. That was the time I tried to lie about that I hadn't been drinking. But they actually had to cut the clothes off of me. I don't remember any of that, just to get my temperature back up in the ICU for a long time. Yeah, just some really rotten times. But now I'm at my point in my life that those rotten or yucky times I'm able to share in a healthy way. And for that, I'm very grateful for. And I never thought that being an alcoholic, being a recovering alcoholic, would ever be a strength. but it is. It is definitely a strength. There's some people out there that don't think it is. Maybe those society in general, society at large, they always have me as an alcoholic, suicidal, but anybody in recovery knows different from that. And that's all that matters to me. I'm not trying to make a point with society in general. I think I get along better with alcoholics. I get along better with addicts. I get along better with people that have spent stretches in prison. I just feel more comfortable around those. I mean, it's just like, hey, you know, what's up? And some people don't understand that either. And I do feel sorry for them. I really do. They should just really open their eyes and say, hey, what time are we at? Okay, so I got to my last suicide attempt. It was down the road at the Hotel by Fresh Market. And I'm not trying to tell you these suicide attempt stories to like do a shock and a wow. And I thought about that in my story, and I'm like, dude, it's your story. So I'm going to tell my story. So I've been in that hotel room for a couple months and been planning suicide just every day. Not eating, trying to make myself weak so I could get to that point. So when I did hang myself in the closet, that I was not weak enough to come out of it. It had been 14 days since I'd had any food during that suicide attempt. And all I remember is waking up on the floor after I'd floated above myself, going, hey, that's kind of cool. Look, you're kind of in a crumpled up position. What's going on there? Looking up in the closet, seeing that brown canvas belt tied tight against that curtain rod or that closet rod. I'm wondering, and then just right back down into my body. And then all the pain came back to me. And as I laid there, it was like a cage of light around me. Most brilliant, beautiful light that I've ever seen in my life. And when that light went away, I was just barely able to turn my head. And I looked up into that closet and saw that belt was tied up against that rod. And I have no idea to this time how I got out of there. It changed my hearing and everything for like a week. I couldn't even hear straight. But from then on, my life has gotten better. That day I spent with Dr. Moonjal and then speaking with my sponsor, Gary, he always told me, he says, you know why I never gave up on you? I says, why, Gary? Because he says, you never gave up either. And I think that it just brings me to tears every time I think about that, because that's just such a beautiful thing, is I never give up. Since then, my recovery journey has been just beyond what I can even imagine. I took the first step with my sponsor over the phone from Providence. I remember walking down the hallway, looking out the highway, the interstate going by there out the windows of Providence, going, okay, dude, this is it. What are you going to do different? You're out of chances. You're just out. It's game over, dude. And I remember I just very clearly standing there, just thinking, okay, this is it. So at that point in time, I started taking Vivitrol shots. I got myself back into inpatient at RCM. Then that last day, I decided I wanted to work there once I had enough sobriety under my belt. And that has been one of the greatest joys of my life, being able to work with men and women in the same positions, same stories. And then again, I've learned a lot that there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot that is not the same. And then it was about 10 months of standing in the RCM kitchen. I was working there one day, and I remember it came out of the blue. And I said it out loud. I says, I love you, Todd. And I was like, holy, I'm one of those guys now. Like, oh, you love yourself. Look in the mirror. Oh my God. And there I was. It gives me goosebumps. And that was pretty cool. Another one of those little miracles. Uh, but once I was out of inpatient, I went to a share house here in town. I knew that I needed that support. I spent several months there. I was doing the inpatient, which I just totally loved. I still miss that group. I waited a year to get a sponsor, but that's all up to, it's kind of one day, man, what am I being complacent on? Oh, sponsor. Just because I work at a recovery center doesn't mean that I didn't need a sponsor. But now my list of phone numbers and names is besides 911 and Yellow Cab is really cool. And these people I can reach out to. These people are there for me. These people care about me. These people understand me. And now having friends has been one of the greatest joys of my life. It's really taught me humbleness and gratitude. Emotional regulation is another one of those things. I got my peer support specialist certificate, but what that was about was more just teaching me about myself, which was really, really cool. So if you ever get a chance to take that course, it's really kind of neat. So, but in closing, I just want to say my happiness, I've just never been happier in my life. I wish I wasn't 57 years old anymore, but I've been just enjoying life beyond every day. Sure, it has its hiccups, and that's okay. I have my friends. But working the program, getting my sponsor, being around sober people, being accountable, being truthful with myself. Sometimes it's painful being truthful with yourself, but it's worth it. Realizing those little things aren't so little. Because I knew that I wouldn't have a chance after that. So don't ever tell yourself, and this is the only like instruction thing I wanted to do during this talk. Don't ever tell yourself that you're not worth it, because you are. Don't let society tell you that you're not. Don't let yourself tell you that you're not, because you are. Never give up. What defines us as individuals is how we rise after we have fallen. Thank you kindly for letting me share. It's been a great pleasure.